Go.
So officially welcome. My name is Adrienne Danyelle Oliver, aka Dr. A. Oliver, the hip hop scholar. And I love supporting artists and educators. So I'm hosting this reading with my pressmates on Finishing Line Press. They're helping me celebrate my chapbook, Collective Madness. I couldn't think of a better title to match the time we're living in right now.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here to celebrate with me. As the hostess, I'm going to kick us off, and then we're just going to go in alphabetical order by first name and introduce each other and share 2 to 3 poems from our books currently published on Finishing Line Press. And I'll be sure to put the links as we go along in case people hear a book. Support a poet. I encourage, if you hear a poem you really like, to get everybody's books. So welcome. And just a little bit about me. I am an educator in the Bay Area, originally from Little Rock, Arkansas. And now I'm currently Oakland-based, teaching in Oakland, writing in Oakland. And I've been writing these poems for a long time about, actually, the title is kind of misleading because it's about fibroid tumors. But I made some connections between my experience and my body to racism in America when I found out that fibroids disproportionately impact Black women. So I'm going to share a little bit about that experience in a couple of pieces. And then I'm so excited to hear from my pressmates and the different, you guys will hear it because there's so many different areas people are writing within, that it just shows all the different dimensions of how we're using poetry to just heal our lives and be in community. So to start, this first poem is called Black and White. First, I want to say I'm sorry, the Black lady doctor. I'm glad I hadn't read the note. It said the cyst was 10 centimeters and life-threatening. Basically, it was saying that I could die over an email. I'm glad that I heard it from my Black doctor first before reading it in black and white. What an amazing difference it made to receive my test results from a Black woman. Not to overgeneralize, because I can remember another time in my life when a Black woman doctor did not have the best bedside manner. So there was definitely something about this particular Black woman in this moment. This is the second poem, A Cherrywood Desk for Writing. And this one is kind of long because it tells like the whole story of my experience. So I'll probably pass it on to Cynthia after this one and maybe come back at the end with a happier poem. So, A Cherrywood Desk for Writing. When I got this apartment, I was acting like I was moving back into a house. Cue the Jeffersons theme song. Because finally, after roommates and IKEA tables, I was getting my own space. Turned out a cherry oak corner desk in the furniture showroom wasn't corner furniture in any of my rooms. It was a centerpiece that yelled, "Look at me," louder than anything else. After much agony, I decided to give it away. I tried to sell it online first, but everybody wants something for nothing these days. And after 2 weeks, I determined to get more space in my bedroom, deleted the price and updated the ad. Free Cherrywood corner desk. I made a commitment to measure my space, think about dimensions next time, so I wouldn't have to give away what had been so good to me. Now I'm always measuring everything to avoid agony of giving something treasured away before its season. It was a lesson well learned. I'm not sure if I'm writing about the desk anymore. I put an ad on Free Cycle after not getting responses. I don't know what made me do that, probably having a memory of having given things away to people I thought were well deserving of something free. Black folks, brown folks, hungry students in debt. It ended up this well-to-do white couple answered the ad from Danville. I remember that Danville was a place for the well-to-do because just so happened I was interviewed for a job there at this secondary school that costs college tuition to attend. And the interview was grueling. I had to teach a class and be interviewed by a table full of private school students, well manicured, bright eyed, and speaking in good SAT vocabulary. It's probably a good thing I wasn't hired there. My public school diploma, chipped fingernails, and Southern grammar already at odds with what could have been my death sentence. The couple from Danville arrives. I meet them at the front door to take them up the elevator to my floor, the buzzer to let in guests long broken. The three of us cram into the 1950s style tiny elevator, then my feeling only slightly bigger bedroom. The husband takes the desk apart and the wife does the carrying, the taking away of each piece bit by bit down the elevator, out the door, to the vehicle that will take them back to Danville. I stand over the white man kneeling over the desk until he unscrews the last wooden leg from the desk overturned top. He rests a head on my bed to catch his breath, to lift himself back up to standing. I feel the sudden urge to run, to reach for the wooden leg, to explain that I'm leaving the room to take down the last piece. On my way down in the elevator, I regret leaving the white man alone in my apartment, but I am glad to have some air, some space from whatever it was that triggered my urge to run away from being alone with him in a bedroom. When I reach the car, the woman is busy rearranging the disassembled pieces neatly into the back of a sedan. We decide to go back up, help her husband bring down the desktop, the smooth wood carved into a perfect corner, the last piece. I hold the elevator and the words back. I didn't want no white folks coming to take nothing. Help with nothing. Help still feels like a house slave, an air-conditioned cotton field, a taken away from me, but I'm desperate for air in this summer heat. My tiny bedroom had been overcrowded by the big desk overseeing big ambitions with no investors, no space for dreaming. The bedroom is more realistic after the desk gone, after we each have taken a corner of the big desktop, taken the elevator down together in awkward silence. The bedroom is more realistic after the desk gone. Empty spaces feel more familiar than big desk dreams, than the noise of aspiration crowding out haunted solitude. After they left, I lit incense, eager to use the new wooden incense holder I bought from the Nepalese store on Park Avenue. After leaving the doctor's office this umpteenth time, discussing alternative childbearing options, a donor egg, a donor sperm, and if that didn't work, a surrogate or adoption. Now here I was in the empty, sitting on the bed, breathing in the new empty space. Now here I was in the empty, communing with echoes of the talk in my doctor's office. I noticed that the incense box was shaped like a miniature coffin. This was my first day sitting with the incense box. This was my first day sitting without that big desktop full of promise. This was my first day sitting with my true feelings about the test results, my true feelings about donor eggs and carrying a baby without my DNA. The feelings were unsettling, yet relieving in a strange way. It was a conversation this time, a letting down easy, rather than a breakup by betrayal, an invitation to still be friends with promise. Still, it didn't change that this was an ending. All of this converged together as cause for a funeral. I had a coffin, a reason to mourn, and painful truths to accept. My womb wasn't going to be a spring flower in this summer field of my life, in this box where the executive desk doesn't fit, in an overpriced studio existence, in this box where epigenetic sexual trauma echoes in the ancestral womb. The serendipity of the incense box being coffin-shaped, the empty space pallbearing, The conversation about infertility, the white people coming to take away my baby dreams, all of this converged together as cause for a funeral. I had every intention of writing a eulogy, a poem about unpacking the well intentions of white folks, a poem about how whiteness navigates systems like a white marriage, filing taxes, claiming insurance, or surfing a listserv looking for something free while paying private school tuition. A poem about how many Black mothers die in childbirth in hospitals after living a whole lifetime in midwives' hands. A poem about Black wombs and infertility. A poem about family stories of white men putting their hands on our beds. A poem about how the fact that whiteness and all its well intentions, no matter how unwanted or unwarranted, are accepting because we are suffocating. A poem about what we didn't choose, about how it crams us up into tight spaces not big enough for our dreams, yet greedy for our nightmares. A poem about all of this converging together as cause for procession. It was going to be a good poem, but I'd grown so weary from the elevator ride, from the cramped space, from the hand on the bed, from the mourning, from the painful truths to accept, that instead of writing a poem, I sat on the edge of the bed. I watched the sunset and incense wistfully float through the holes in my incense box, holes shaped like lace or bullet holes, allowing smoke from a burning gun to seep through. Ashe. So the collection is called Collective Madness. If you want to get in there with Black women and our doctor's office visits, it is the book for you. I mean, for everybody. So, and with that, I want to introduce Cynthia Young, who I just learned lived in the Bay Area for 30 years, went to Laney College. So there's some connections there. Serendipity, synchronicity. Cynthia Young is a native of Newark, New Jersey. Her writing has appeared in several journals, including Poetry South, Three Line Poetry, Sixfold, and she was a featured poet in Catapula, a journal of Southern perspectives. Her poetry chapbook, Migration, was published by Finishing Line Press. After 30 years in the San Francisco Bay Area, she now makes Tennessee her home, where she is an adjunct professor in exceptional education in Georgia. She has won 2 honorable mentions in the Writer's Digest Poetry Competition and was a finalist in the Blue Light Press Poetry and Chapbook Competition. Cynthia Robinson Young.
Thank you. So I'm going to read, I think I can fit in 3 poems. So my book, here it is, Migration. I started it as a book, just trying to find the history of my family through reading the census and ancestry.com and finding out, just our whole history of migration up to Newark, New Jersey. And so this is basically what that collection's about, and then just stuff about my parents. So 3 poems. The first one is the one that got me started. The only name that we had, because names are so important, you guys collect names. Her name is Agururu, and she was the first name that we had. And so this is a poem for her, the prologue. Message from Agururu. We don't see a shadow unless it's already been cast. We saw our elders passing through the valley of the shadows, the shadow of death. We smelled decaying flesh, saw bloated bodies. We recognized them nonetheless. Our mothers and fathers, our aunts and uncles, our babies unborn. The ocean Atlantic was transformed. It is the river Styx, running crimson, running blood red. We see our reflections in the water. We want to turn away. We cannot. We have to look. We have to see. Sharon is disguised as slave trader, captaining the Middle Passage. He has stocked his ship with desperate souls. We are praying for ascension, to fly, but if not to fly, to die and be lifted up and away. We pray for death descending. We fling the only thing left. Do we not own our own lives? We fling them overboard into the warm water grave. The waves wait patiently for us. The rest of us remain below, buried in the bowels of the ship's living hell. 2. While George Washington was forging a new nation, our elder parents were birthing the firstborn of our American family. Her name was Agururu. Our blood runs through Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and here in America. Through tobacco and cotton fields, through thick and thin treed forests, our elder father, our elder mother, they found each other. Their bodies, their spirits came together, warming the North Carolina soil. It was here Agururu was born and given the only gift she could keep, her name. Not caring about the gift, her master gave her his chosen one, and she was reborn Charity, without even a surname, until she was married and became a Gatling, only because her husband was owned by one. My name is Agururu, no matter what they call me. When you say my name, you tell my story. So she told all of her children about the shadows, and we repeated it to our children, and so on, and so on. And now, come closer, for we are telling it to you. And then this poem about my father who died when I was 9. And I was listening to someone talk about their deathbed experience with their parents, and so this poem is called My Father on His Deathbed, except he didn't have one. His deathbed was an alley street, far away from comfort. He was abandoned, lonely, confused, staring at a needle he had anchored into his arm, not meaning to draw his life out, staring into streetlights until they became stars. He wonders what will happen next in a world he believed he created with his family, and now believes the drugs have destroyed. I, on my twin bed, across from my sister, hear the doorbell ring at 4 a.m. See it's still dark as the night before. Recognize even then the sound of the insistent knock of death's messenger. My mother, in her empty marital bed, reaches out to no one, then awakens to grief and an expectancy of this visit, these policemen, this news, this ending that was always on its way to our doorstep. So that was just the effects of, the migration moving north to whatever we got involved in. And then the last one is Visit from My Mother, who died, now it feels like yesterday, but it's actually 23 years ago. And my grandmother really, she put a lot of stock into dreams, that they were important. And so, yeah, this is called Visit from My Mother. The fragrance of her perfume woke me in the night. Her spirit now untethered from her body not yet returned to the dust of earth. Where did you go? To heaven, where the angels sing. Where did you go? To meet with God, to give him an answer. Why did you come back? To tell you not to worry. Why did you come back? Because I didn't want to leave. Why did you leave? I made bad choices. Why did you leave me? Because my days were never mine to number. How do I go on? Love the people who have hurt us. How do I go on now? Love the people who will hurt you. They are human, just like you. Thank you. So now I am going to introduce Debra Turner. In her debut chapbook collection, Sweating It Out, Debra Turner breaks out from the pack. This metaphor is entirely appropriate since Turner refers to this collection as her jock poetry. As a reader may expect, she explores the connection between sports and self-discovery, but she also carves out poetic space to investigate income inequality, remember 9/11, and celebrate gospel music. So thank you, Debra Turner, for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Those are beautiful pieces. I can't start mine without acknowledging that you did just the powerful images that you shared, and in such a beautiful and loving way. Just thank you so much for that. And I'm already surprised by the interwoven themes that I'm hearing from death, from white versus black doctors, from dreams. I'll just say it because I might tear up again, but I lost my mother last month, so a lot of the images were really fresh and just as really relevant. So thank you for that. Yes, talk about sweating it out. That's again the name of my book. I'm gonna start with the midway piece in the book. It's called Time Out. Time Out. Oh goodness. Sorry, just one moment. The endless anticipating comes to a stop first, followed reluctantly by the double checking, the enduring deferring, the sad second guessing, and tirelessly looking over your shoulder, which you suddenly realize you've done your whole life. Can't recall when you didn't, as you try to stick to an extended exhale. A single thought breaks the quiet attention. What if an unceremonious strand of hair curls, skin dries up to ashy, a pleasing look grows placid. When your meditation teacher sees, prompts you to soften your eyelids, you wonder if she notices your legs aren't all that's crossed. With further prompting, you hold what little you've gained by overdoing, overdressing, over-smiling, over-ingratiating, and how it helped you avoid underwhelming and miss being dismissed. Still, you try again. Exhale and release the discomfort from being the only one. Let go of looks you've gotten from not playing, not sharing what you know with the bosses around you, for though younger and unknown, they surely will advance farther, faster, regardless of where. You disregard insights into how to disappear, politely open doors or stand close to cleaning carts until colleagues assume you're not one of them, despite having just left the same meeting in which only the lookalikes got a word in edgewise. And slowly, as if one by one, lessons of assimilating up and fly up and out the meditation retreat window, taking with them the good sense your mama made you promise to use, until you've lifted off your cushioned zafu, ever too small for your God-given black behind. Mindfully being human is not what you expected. Sitting in stillness, you practice not playing nice. With a deep inhale, you hold the question, how am I to enjoy this? Then it comes to you. Trust you will be taken seriously. Let flow your thoughts unfiltered. Your words resound uninterrupted. Wear animal prints, check your chakra, shake your mudra maker, sing your sangha. At last, emerging from the colors of their own nirvana, few eyes open to see another Black woman. Stop the clock, acknowledge what is, and emerge ready to re-engage, this time not playing the game. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't mention that was from a meditation retreat. If any of you ever tried to meditate, it can be really hard, and sometimes that was some of the things that come up for me. I didn't sort of position myself in society in the world. I moved around a lot as an Air Force family. I also lived in the Bay Area for a time, both Santa Cruz. I was a librarian there in Berkeley, and then I taught librarians after I earned my PhD. I like to say I earned a BMW, not a PhD, because I went to Berkeley, Michigan, and then Washington. But that's just my really bad humor. My sister was trying to be here. I don't know that she's here. My sister, this poem is for her. It is in the book, and in the book in the book it says it's dedicated to all who have experienced adult onset mental illness. You know, whether you've been diagnosed or you know someone who has. And my sister has, and she's dealt with a lot. We've dealt with a lot. I love her dearly. I hope she's here, and my brother, but I don't think they're able to be here tonight. And again, this poem's for my sister. It is a jock poetry series, so with my sports poem, this poem I also consider a slap on the butt to Virginia Woolf. So if anyone knows, she has her famous book, To the Lighthouse. This poem is called From the Lighthouse. Again, that's From the Lighthouse. Here, amidst the circling light, I don't need to see the sea to remember the rocky waters we traversed. Back then, on our journey for two, even keel was not an option. Still, we rode the waves to sunset when a storm seduced us further from shore. We tried to toe the line, had to, then sat beneath the quiet eye, wet and laughing at our lucklessness. We thought we were prepared, but we had no way to be. The waves came steady as a heart beating until the quiet after, when they reached over and pulled you in. How the vessel grew big as dawn to hold your absence and carry me home. I don't need to see the sea to remember. I miss you still, being carried away on waves of madness. May the water take you to where the wind could not, and may you know my love, even as I leave the lighthouse. Thank you. Thank you. Thank y'all. Thanks y'all for hearing that one. I feel really fortunate because my last poem, I love all my poems, but I really love this poem, and it was nominated for a Pushcart Award. It's the opening poem in my book, Sweating It Out. My book's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but most importantly, at the Finishing Line Press website. You can find it there. And I wanted to read this poem last as well, and I wanted to really just, before I read it, give a shout out to Adrienne Danyelle Oliver. Best of luck with your book launch, and congratulations. And it's so easy for us to be, as adults, to be in competition. But sometimes when we watch children and how they just come together so easily and play, you'll hear that in this poem. And it also reminds me of us being able to come together to share our work, all from Finishing Line Press and from our lives tonight. So thank you, Adrienne. Thank you, all of my press mates. I love that word, Adrienne. I hadn't heard it before. It's wonderful to share a Zoom stage with y'all. Here's my last poem. It's called Juneteenth. Juneteenth. Some come for the music, some for the something from nothing recipes, 2-3 centuries old, nourishment like a hug from the ancestors. Some come to make money, some to spend. Made this myself, half price today. Twinkle in her deep brown spies the bill stamped black money. This time they really do reap what they sow. Some come for the crowds, some for green, open space, warm, inviting talk, and a chance to see all in the absence of urgency. And the children run free like schools of sardines, lacing the kelp-like crowd in jubilee. And the ancestors, smiling, whisper in trees, say, sun rays, ease my pain, let me rest in peace. Thank you. Thank you so much, y'all. Thank you. So you've gotten the style already, so now it's my turn to introduce our next speaker. Misty, you're up, you and your cute little cat who keeps coming in and out of your screen there. Misty D Bellinger has a Master's of Fine Arts from Southampton College, and a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Nebraska. She has published in many journals and anthologies, including Contrary Magazine, OK Donkey, The Rumpus, Necessary Fiction, and The Best Small Fictions 2019. Go, girl. She also has a poetry chapbook, Rubbing Elbows, with Finishing Line Press. A Milwaukee native, Misty lives and teaches in Central Massachusetts. You can find her website at demistybellinger.com.
Thank you, Deborah. This is so exciting. Everyone is so good so far, and I'm afraid to go. I can follow any of that. And what I love being my fourth today is these echoes, and I have an advantage of knowing what's in my books. I have a poem called June 10th in my latest book, so it's much different than Deborah's, but as celebratory, I think. Okay, so I'm gonna start with Rubbing Elbows, a couple of poems from that. This is my cover. This cover is from a friend of mine and has nothing to do with the book, but I'm gonna start with Misterioso, which is a poem titled and inspired by a song written by Thelonious Monk, same name, Misterioso. Monk's goatee pointed somewhere over my shoulder. I turned and looked where it was directed me and saw floating in a cafe, halftones and tritones and seconds bleeding through the air. I didn't think they looked like that. I had imagined music to look as it is notated, fat balls with erect tails, but music is fuller and amorphous and polychromatic. The word synesthesia came to mind. I couldn't hear the music Monk played anymore, just the aftertones, notes not found in a single piano key, but resounding in a case and against the harp. I couldn't concentrate anymore. I followed the sound to an altar covered in purple and lavender and black, knelt on a prayer bench covered in red velvet, and to hear clearer, took a vow of silence. And most of the poems in this book are about celebrities living and dead. And so that one was about Thelonious Monk, who's a jazz composer. And this one is about a friend of mine who wrote a blurb for this book, came up to me after I read it, and he said, "Each gay man has a diva, and Whitney is my diva." And you read that, and it just made my heart explode. So I'm going to read Conversations with Whitney over colas. Talk about the gaucheness of hotel bathtubs. Do not mention hotel bathtubs. Say nothing of hotels. Expound on the importance of family and children, but refrain from using the word future. Make eye contact and make her laugh. Do not smoke in front of her. Do not smack your teeth in front of her. Do not mention men who go freely before cameras and boast around her. Do not talk of men. Do not talk of awards or the coolness of bathtubs, the porcelain ungiving, the water hot as blood, the bubbles dissipating before the bath is over. And so I wrote Rubbing Elbows. I was really happy with it, but 2016 November happened, and I felt useless in what I was doing. So I started writing neo-slavery poems and poems that brought us out of that period and tried to explain the world we live in now. And I'm going to read a poem, if you don't mind, from my latest book, which is Peculiar Heritage. That's the cover there, and that's what Mason Jar Press. And this, I'm reading Tituba because I went to the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts today, and they had an exhibit today on the Salem witch trials. And Tituba, as many of you probably already know, was blamed for the catalyst of the witchery that was supposedly going on in Salem. And she was an enslaved woman from the then called West Indies. I'll tell you what you want me to if I can be free. It is cold here, and I don't know the old England. This is all new to me. I'll tell you what you want me to if I can be free. I would traverse this coast on foot, float down the Atlantic to warmer waters. I'll tell you anything. Yes, say which. Yes, say spell. I don't care for tea or the way you speak, the way you don't sing. I close my eyes, I'll cast a spell for me and say aloud, yes, I see waters the color of the stones found on the shores and palm fronds waving. I don't hurt the children, I say. I do not hurt them. I say the devil came. I say anything. I say it because I think they'll uncage me. I say anything. I tell them stories of animals with the minds of men, stories of dances and cats betting the devil's doing if they'll have me no more. I tell them because I want to be free. If they want me no more with the family, no more in Salem, no more coldness, I'll tell them a story. That's my 3. Thank you so much, Adrienne, for inviting me. And congratulations on your book. Hope you have great luck with finishing line. Next up, we have Juanita Curtin. Dr. Juanita Curtin earned an MFA from Goddard in 2015, creative writing and poetry, and was a recipient of the Goddard College Spirit Scholarship. Juanita is published in several anthologies, including A Vow or American Veteran Association for Women magazine, a Journal of Hope and Healing, Caribbean Writer, Chester H. Jones Literary Journal, Clever Girl, Exit 13 Magazine, Dream Quest, Goldfinch Literary Magazine, Mom Egg Review, Narrative, Other Voices, Persimmon, Pink Panther Magazine, Rat Sass Online Journal, Southeast Missouri State Uni Press, Stone Canoe, Terra Preta Review, Veterans Voices and Word Peace. Juanita's poetry manuscript titled Letters to My Father was accepted for publication by Finishing Line Press. Without further ado, here is Juanita.
Hi, everyone. Wow. What an honor to be among all these young people of color who are poets and writers who are putting their stuff on the page. I'm honored to be among you. Here's my book, Letters to My Father. And it is almost like a poetic memoir about the sexual assault that I experienced with my dad for a number of years when I was a young teenager. And writing, as we talked about, being a healing tool really helped me with that. So I'm going to read just 2-3 poems from this book. First poem in the book is called Listen. Listen. My father taught me to listen inside a conch shell. Seas sent from the ocean. Wait for the wave. Swim with flying fish. Change a tire, the oil. Mother taught me to stir love into flour. Braid here. Piano lessons. Recite a poem. Drive far to forget. Hold a family secret. Daddy wore stiff white shirts, drove Cadillacs, played cricket. I danced on his shoes. He touched me in the dark. Mummy loved to dance, dominated bid whist, fried codfish cakes, stripped wallpaper, church attendance a must. She wore gloves, ignored betrayal, forgot to listen. Daddy was visible. Mommy ignored in blindness. She lingered there. Daddy said, don't tell. Mommy remained silent. I didn't tell. Mommy and Daddy are speechless. Next piece is every Wednesday. My parents are Barbadian, and my grandmother used to make a dish called kuku, which is steamed okra and cornmeal. And she did it every Wednesday. It didn't matter if it was very hot or whatever. And in those days in the Brooklyn brownstones, they had no air conditioning. Every Wednesday, Fry up some codfish cakes with Bajan hot sauce, water set to boil, cup of yellow cornmeal, chop okra, salt with a pinch, blend and stir, mix and fold, lower the heat. Brooklyn brownstones in the 1950s, grandma stirs cuckoo. The air is heavy. Perspiration drips into the pot, rendering more brine. She stirs in love, tweaks, and nurtures. We eat steamy cuckoo on Wednesdays. Daddy's mummy sings my name. It drapes above the vapors. I sit on 2 phone books to reach. Brother tugs at mommy's right nipple. 8 years, 2 more will extract the last drops. 8 years, grandma's son steals my song. The steam dissolves. I'm invisible, and grandma no longer stirs cuckoo. And another piece that I'll read, I ride a motorcycle, and after many decades of counseling and therapy and medications and hospitalizations, I forgave my dad before he passed away, and my mother. And I used to ride from Pennsylvania to Florida, and my father would love to ride on the back seat. This is called back seat. On my motorcycle, I have control. Tucked behind my helmet, he fits perfectly in the back seat. He peered over my shoulder. I enter the highway. I heard his confession. Twist the throttle. I touch 90. I felt a smile at my back. A shared need for speed. Regardless of the risks, he followed the course down the looping road. No fear of intrusion, my truth journey unbridled, free to map the direction. Soaring on 2 wheels, flanked by God, my feet planted in grace, balancing mercy and hate. I ride the winds of emancipation, released from his power, my father rediscovered on the arduous journey to forgiveness. And I have one more poem that I like to read. It's not from the book, but it's recently going to be released in Sinister Wisdom. And I'm reading it because Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben used to grace our tables. And this is called Dear Aunt Jemima. Dear Aunt Jemima, drizzled on Sunday pancakes, familiar sweet caramel, your brown smile grinning through pain, white teeth always pleasing, smooth black skin, a constant reminder, a collective traumatized sneer, both beauty and brutal, evoking memories, toxic, healing, unattainable. I mourn your loss, no promise for reawakening, remaking, rebranding. Dear Aunt Jemima, tell me your story. An enslaved mammy, unnamed faces, Nancy Green, the original, wide-eyed, head wrap, integrated breakfast tables, declassified. But I remember Rosa Lee Moore Hall, Ethel Ernestine Harper, Anna Short Harrington, Arlene Lewis, Maud Woodfork McClory, Lillian Richard, Rosa Washington Riles, Anna Robinson, Edith Wilson, hailing from Alabama, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas. In 1893, the Pearl Milling Company, then the Davis Milling Company, then the Aunt Jemima Mills Quaker Oats Company, debuted in 1889, a minstrel show of the old Aunt Jemima song, 1950s caricature features, rounded eyes, watermelon mouth, an original painting by A.B. Frost. 1968, put on a weight loss program. 1989, 100th birthday, image update, head wrap removed, opt for press and curl or maybe a perm, gray hair streaked, pearl earrings, lace around your plain white collar, lighter, brighter, sophisticated, redefined, contemporary, recast. Dear Aunt Jemima, ready-made, all natural, better with butter, 50% fewer calories. No Blacks in the Breakfast Club. No Blacks in the Pancake House. I rename you. Renewed manifestation on the shelves, on the box, on the bottle. It is not taboo to go back and fetch that which you have forgotten, a Sankofa African proverb. Thank you. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce Kay Bell. Kay Bell is the author of 2 collections of poetry, Cry, Sweet, Bleed, White by Lily Poetry Review Books, and Diary of Intersection, Finishing Line Press, a member of the Harlem Writers Guild. She received the MFA from City College of New York, where she was the recipient of the Esther Unger Poetry Prize and David Dorff Prize in Creative Writing for Nonfiction. Kay's poetry has appeared in numerous venues, including Spastic Review, The Right Launch, and the book Brown Molasses Sunday, an anthology of Black women writers. She lives in the South Bronx, yay Bronx, and is passionate about bringing the arts back to public school and the issues that affect marginalized communities. Kay Bell.
Hi, everyone. First, I just want to say congratulations to Adrienne on her new publication. I'm very inspired by everyone that just read, and I hope I can follow into that same vein. I'm going to be reading 2 short poems from my book, Diary of an Intercessor, and then I'm going to read another really short one from a new poetic memoir that I'm also working on. And Juanita, I'm also from Barbados. So my first poem, it's so funny. It is going to detail a little bit of my Bajan roots too, and about cuckoo. So, so this first poem is called Black or Brown. You are Black or maybe brown, your hair nappy, your youthful and poised, round nose, full lips, and thighs as dense as a stack of $20 bills. You sit on the stoop of a new building in the hood and read Baraka, Giovanni, and sometimes Shakespeare. The older women pass and slip you a fistful of change, telling you to buy an icy from the hairy man who doesn't speak English. Then you grow up and go home every weekend to wash your clothes and talk to your Black or maybe brown mom, who calls you white. You tell her that Africa isn't a state, and the reason she doesn't have wrinkles has nothing to do with placing limes on her eyes, but it's the melanin in her skin. You tell her white is not a color, and it's not a language. You tell her white is a color and not a language, so you can't talk white. You tell her Bill Clinton was not the first Black president, and yes, you crush on Ben Stiller. Your mom gives you a plate of cuckoo and flying fish. You appreciate the cornmeal and okra parachuting down your throat. The clothes are clean, so when you finish eating, you kiss your mom on her cheeks and tell her you're leaving. She offers you a cigarette and questions your honesty when you tell her you quit. Then you notice her shameful tears slithering from the history of her eyes. She accuses you of ignorance, but you hold her anyway and avoid describing your alienation in a world where you were never Black or brown, just a pariah. Not a Bajan or an American, just a fatherless baby mama without a home. You want to tell her the world never sang your song, and the music you invented only lives inside of you. But you grab your laundry and kiss her, reminding her you will be back next week. You get on the elevator, dig inside your purse, and find your wallet, taking a fistful of change for the Black or maybe brown kids that will be sitting on the stoop. So this next poem is a poem that I wrote dedicated to Langston Hughes. I mean, who doesn't love Langston Hughes, right? And it's titled America. I think I may know a little about your dreams, deferred and damaged, turning themselves around and around like magic. Because like you, America was never America to me either. I have imagined what it would have been like if this land, which supposedly is mine and yours, and everyone else that looks like us, would have been a land of freedom or real democracy and something besides just a little girl's imagination. Oh, what a world it would be. But I guess I have some of those basic dreams too. You know, the ones that spin around and kind of go nowhere. And even the ones that seem to play themselves out unexpectedly. And like you, I wonder if there's any land where we are all free from the emotional and physical entanglements of a dream deferred. Because I am too tangled, stretched, and called ugly. But like you, I won't stop dreaming. You see, because we never dream in vain. And if we allowed America to defer our dreams, it would really make me wonder, who is it that we're dreaming for anyway? We, the people, are the people who hold our own dreams, and they don't always have to be in tears or sorrows. Mine are in my legs because I'm walking with victory. So they can call me ugly. Most of the time, they can't say it to my face. And even if they did, my America is the dream the dreamers dreamed, and there's nothing ugly about that. This last poem, it's not from my book, but as I said before, I'm also working on a poetic memoir, and this is one of the poems from there. It's titled Girl, and it starts with an epithet. My mother's favorite story, a dull one, of course, is that she did not scream during birth. Human knew. Once I found out my mother nearly drowned herself while pregnant with me, I understood my depression. There's something about the guilt of being born when the day will not have you that shoves you towards the center of silence until you cannot scream or reach. They say if the mother hates the baby as it grows inside the belly, it's a girl. They say if the girl hates the mother as it grows inside the belly, it's diabolical. And because I was such a quiet child, my mother often could not find me. I would close my eyes and hide in the corners of my room. When my mother peeked into the tiny spaces, she would ask, "What are you doing?" And I would ball myself up tighter, and almost in a whisper, I'd answer, "I'm trying to drown." Thank you. So now I have the pleasure of introducing Martin Wiley. A mixed race child of the 80s, Martin Wiley grew up confronting and embracing a world that was mixed and confused as he was. He lives in Philadelphia, working as the adult learning lead instructor at Project Home and adjuncting at Rosemont College. As much as possible, however, his focus remains on his wife, Christy, and their kids, Isella and Elio. I hope I said that right. His chapbook, Just More, is forthcoming on Finishing Line Press.
Thank you, thank you. So one thing I was thinking when Misty, when you were reading, it made me think of just the ways that kind of poetry mirrors jazz, right? A little bit. And, you know, when I've talked with jazz musicians, I have no musical talent myself whatsoever, none, like absolutely none. But they just talk about how, you know, when musicians are playing the same song, they kind of listen to the choices that the other musician makes when they're doing a solo, and it's all about like which notes they're going to play or whatever, and they're, you know, oh wow, I'm surprised by that. And like as a poet, it's kind of like that when I listen to everybody else read. It's like, wow, I would never have gone, like, even if I knew what you were writing about, wouldn't have gone that way. And that's really awesome. And I would love to, at some point, to have a conversation with folks and be like, well, what made you write that like that? Like that's the kind of stuff that interests me. I also have to say, Juanita, I got my BA from Goddard. So in that conversation, I would love to talk to you about what you felt like being up in the mountains in Vermont with a whole bunch of white people, because I know I got stories. So, you know, anyway, leave that. So my chapbook is heavily inspired by conversations that I had with my kids around like Black Lives Matter and a lot of things that were happening, when it just felt like every day we woke up to worse news. And, you know, having an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old who are like, well, why is this happening? And, you know, there's no answer really. I mean, kind of, but not really. So yeah, so these poems were kind of inspired by that. And they're all untitled. So mornings have become a heavy weight, eventually getting up and facing notifications on the phone and finding brand new holes in the heart and fearing too many sobbing posts on my timeline. As a kid, I was told knowing is half the battle, but they forgot to say it's always been the hurting half. I didn't want to know how we died last night. I simply wanted to wake up to Big Brother Sun and take a moment to rest my soul on a porch swing and listen to those precious few happy Nina Simone songs. Get ready to dance and live and just be. The existential exhaustion of fury is the part most difficult to explain to those that don't know, to those that don't carry it inside their chest. This system does all it can to break Black bodies, to shatter already wounded minds, and then make certain to stomp any pieces that dare rage in their face, those dying souls that risk existing where prying eyes can see what the living strained to hide. They spy us at our worst. Once we have nothing left to lose, and I'll never understand what they think to gain by putting us out of their misery. Even so, these protests will continue, and these tears will wash fresh blood from our cheeks, and we, bearing timeless shoulders that Atlas could only envy, we will lift that weight just one more time, just one more day, and take just one more step. We know no other way. Okay, so this one is, I don't usually like to point out the references that I make in a poem or whatever, but just in case, this one I like to, because I really like this poem and I want people to understand where it's coming from. But the references are specifically to the character Aaron from Titus Andronicus by Shakespeare, who is one of my favorite Shakespeare characters. He's easily the angriest Shakespeare character, and considering he is a slave doing everything he can to be free, and is totally unashamed that he's doing horrible things because he's a slave. So fuck it. Oh, excuse my language, but screw it, we'll say. And also a reference to Beloved by Toni Morrison, and a reference to Mount Moriah, which is where Abraham brought his child. Okay, so anyway, sorry, there we go. Hidden to survive, there is death in my blood. There is no simplicity in people like me, no people like me, too many people in me. The sins of my father end in me. I have no choice but to explain to my own children how mixed skin is a pre-existing condition. And I can tell them that they deserve better and that we should have been better. I fed myself on Aaron's rage. I feared myself in Sethi's grief, but you both will write your own pages, new songs meant to be sung, not shouted. Your presence altered my existence, dragged me to the altar of Mount Moriah, and I know which way my knife would point. Pray to the devils the gods have given us over. They wanted this, and I have brought you unknowing to a world that will question your beauty, that will proclaim gray so base a hue, that will mock your resolve, that will burn before admitting you've won. It does not deserve you, and I cannot let myself wonder if I've failed you by making you. The echoes of trauma stayed deafening, but somehow my fury did not become hate, did not crawl inside and eat through the bones on its way out. Somehow I found my glory, and somehow that was enough. And now I no longer understand how blood spills its own blood. I fight to wake from nightmares of looking for myself in a mirror and seeing only my birth father's black fingers stained red. But those aren't my knuckles, and that isn't my fist. The rage remains, though, and the hands are clenched, always. Tell America from me, I am of age to keep mine own. Excuse it how she can. All right, and I'm going to end with one last one that is a little happier. Yeah. So, hope. Hope is a song you didn't realize you knew the words to until you dared to dance. Hope is a belief that when your time comes to stride to the front, someone will be there having your back. Hope births itself in your imagination, feeds on your memory, and lodges within your chest like some gleeful parasite. Hope is symbiotic and cathartic, helpless and helpful, lost and somehow still your guiding light. It will blister fingers and twist in your hands, slip and fall if you grip too tight, if you let go, if you stare too hard, if you look away. It has never existed, but it's all we are made from. Hope is a thing impossible to talk about without sounding corny or emotional. It is the thing most needed to be talked about. My son told me that hope and compassion are the weakest emotions in these times, and 8-year-olds should never have to be that observant or that sad. I told him he was wrong, that he could not be more wrong. Any person who can hold to hope, who can care even for others they do not know, who can believe this world somehow worthy of their effort. Such a person is to be feared, to be respected. A handful of people, such people can scream down tyrants, build up governments, give birth to movements. He listened, silent, and in his face I could see it. To be honest, only a touch. But then again, just enough. Thank you. And I don't think I have anyone to introduce, so I will just give it back to Adrienne and thank her for inviting me.
No, thank you. That was so
Wonderful. Wow.
amazing. You guys, that was so amazing. There's lots of love in the chat. And I also want to highlight 2 other poets that couldn't be with us. So I'll put Deonte's and Susie's work in the chat. They're also on Finishing Line Press and sending lots of love to our event. And then since we have some extra time, does anybody have any questions? Then if not, we'll just close out. I'll close out with a happy poem, like Martin said. Any questions for the poets or words to pass on? Maria says, so beautiful, grateful, happy to have you here. Karen says, how did you all start writing poetry? That's a good question. Does anybody want to take that on? How did you start writing? I know most writers say, I've been writing since I was 5 years old.
I can start. Yeah, I've been writing since I was pretty young. I didn't always have the confidence to have full paragraphs. And I found a way to have a voice in poetry. And I wouldn't have known that when I started. I didn't know that until years, decades later, that when I started writing a novel and in a new writing group who didn't know me or my work. And after several weeks of bringing in several chapters that were just missing things, I brought in a poem because I was just tired of working on prose. And they all went, "Oh, no wonder. All right, Deborah, when you're working on prose, you got to have plot, and you got to describe the character, and you got to describe things." And I'm like, oh, "Okay, I'm a poet, you know." So that's my short answer. It's a great question. Thanks.
I came to poetry in the back way because of my abuse and issues. I stopped talking and I started writing stuff down on paper. And so that's how I started communicating when I was like 13. And I did not think of poetry at all. It was just stuff that I was writing. It wasn't until I got into college where one of my professors encouraged me to continue writing. And then I got published in a college newspaper, and that was it for me.
I actually started out as a visual artist. I was a painter, and I was in art school, and miserable, and realized that I needed to leave, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I was hanging out at a friend's dorm room, and he had to go run some errands, and so he was like, "Hey, you just stay here," and he handed me a book of poetry, Space and Other Poems by Elliot Katz. Actually, I have it right here, Space and Other Poems by Elliot Katz. And I remember he was playing Enya or something that I would never listen to, right? Like so I just sat and like by candlelight was reading this book and listening to this, to me, very like, what the heck is this music? And it just really kind of like moved me like a lot. Like it was really a very intense experience. And by the time it was done, like my friend was only gone for like maybe an hour. And when he came back, I was like, well, now I know what I'm doing for the rest of my life. This is me now. I'm doing this. It's your fault. I'm doing this. And from there, it just kept going.
Okay, for me, I started out, I majored in art school, in high school. So I always see things in images. And so it was a natural, I always liked writing, but that poetry, plus I have 8 children, so I never had a lot of time to focus. So poetry was like, okay, I can do this really quick and get in and get out. And one of the people that really inspired me to write things that were meaningful was Sonia Sanchez. Just reading when that whole Black poets movement came out and it was all, political work. And I'm like, you can really write poetry and say something. It was so exciting. So that really spurred me on.
I am one of those poets that I've been writing since I was 5, which sounds so pretentious, but no, I have been writing all my life. And I can talk about how I returned to poetry, because when I went for my MFA, I started focusing on fiction. So I was not liking the poetry I was hearing around me. I was not in a good place with poetry, and I returned to it much later in life when I went on the job market and I saw that having publications in both poetry and fiction makes it more marketable in academia. But like Cynthia said, she was an art major. Martin says he was a painter. I was always interested in writing, but I was always a music major in school. I went to art school since grade school, and I always studied music. Not a good musician.
I think it's me. So I started writing poetry really young too. I remember in the 6th grade, my teacher gave us haikus to write, the Japanese poetry haikus. And I've been keeping a journal and writing since then. So no big story.
No, okay, that's the same for me. I've been keeping a journal since I was like 12, I think. And just within that process of processing just different medical things I was going through. That's why my emphasis is really on like healing and writing, because that's been my experience. And I also write prose, and I've just found recently that poetry was just more accessible. I can kind of relate. Deborah, you were like, those paragraphs though, it's like, let me just finish and get a poem done. So, but I am still working on some prose. And there's another question about publishing. I would just say, Kawezi, submit your work, like go on Submittable and some of the other platforms I've used, Duotrope, to found out about opportunities and just start putting pieces out there, as many as you can.
Yeah, subscribe to Poets and Writers too. Yeah,
Subscribe to Poets
put
and
your
Writers.
stuff out there. Yeah.
I would also say that like readings help, like going places, like reading for people that don't have to like it, because that can help you to refine your craft. Like I'll say that I'm fortunate. I came of age as a poet in the 90s when there were like open mics. Literally, you just walk down the street and there'd be like 3 invitations to an open mic. So that that was like how I became more confident as a poet. And I think that submitting, but also just having that experience of getting feedback, which is a lot easier with poetry. Then that's one of the reasons why I really concentrate on poetry as opposed to fiction, because you could go to a reading and read like 15 minutes of poetry and everyone would clap. But if you tried to read a short story or something like that, no one was paying any attention past like minute 2. So just having that experience of reading and getting feedback or whatever makes your work stronger, which I think can help.
Yeah, and I saw someone say in the chat that they're nervous. And I think that you need to, in submitting, you're going to get rejections. It's just part of the process. But just keep at it. And like I agree with you, Martin. Going out to readings is harder now because of COVID. But try to do stuff online. Just get your voice out there and get your stuff out there.
Yeah. It's like music. The more you listen and the more you practice, the better you get. And the same with poetry. The more you read other people's words, the more you practice at writing, the better you'll get. I really believe that. Read a variety of poets and poetry. And just the more you do it, the more you practice it. It is an art. You have to practice it. Ted Cruz, I never took a class with him, but he was at the University of Nebraska, and all his students that took a class with him told me that he always says, read 100 poems before you write one poem. And I like that advice.
Read 100 poems before you write one poem. That's awesome. I did forget to say that we're all readers. I think several people are educators. So yes, reading poetry is so important.
I would also just add real quick that like for me, being published was super, like I just wanted it, right? And so I would have taken 1,000 more rejections, right? Because this is what I wanted. If you don't feel that way, that's totally cool. Like you don't like, I don't think that me being published suddenly makes me a better poet, right? Like I'm the same poet I was, whether or not I had a book coming out. It just means that people have access to it in a different way, which I really love. But like, I think sometimes like in arts, we have a certain kind of judgment on people who are published or trying to get published or this, that, and the other. And if you want that and you want to take on the challenge of trying to get published and dealing with, accepting rejections, like Juanita said, like accepting that, then great, go ahead, do it. Just keep going and don't let it stop you. But if you don't really want to, then like, don't, that's okay. That's cool. You can still be a great poet and not, be published.
I'd second that. I'm an oral person. I talk to the point where even when I was earning my PhD, I looked at oral information, how people talk to get information. And so for years, I didn't think my poems could translate onto the page. And I really just enjoyed being in person, having poetry readings with small crowd, large crowd, whatever. And I feel lucky that I shared the stage with lots of different folks. And for me, there's just really something in that interchange. Is it any, coincidence that I'm also a jock, I love playing, whether it's basketball, swimming, whatever, I just got to touch, I got to hear, I got to feel, but for me, part of that, the poetic process is that interchange, is that energy I get from audience, that sound that for me, I love it even more than applause. And it kind of sounds like this. Huh. So right after a poem, we miss it because we're in Zoom, but there's the one little moment where you finish the poem and the audience just goes, huh. And it's just really quiet exhalation. That's just a beautiful thing for me. And it just feeds me. And I also hear the words inside my head. I'm often, riding my bike or walking or doing whatever. And I'm reciting these poems over and over in my head. They're a part of my existence. And so to hear them and say them out loud for me just brought me a lot more pleasure than having them published. So I have a few poems published. I'm working on more, but it took me a while to come into wanting and desiring publication. So I totally appreciate what you're saying, Martin.
Okay, I want to be respectful of the time. I know I said 5 to 6:30, well, PST, in my time zone. So were you gonna say something?
Yeah. So I told you all my sister's here. She's having some difficulty with chat, but she had a couple of questions. Would you mind if I read them?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. So this is from Jill. Her questions are, did Juanita confront her mom for not protecting her? Did she forgive her? Those are her questions.
Okay, so yes, I confronted my mother, and I had to forgive my mom too. There's 4 kids in the family, so I had to forgive my mom also. But I also had to put myself in her shoes as an adult. What would I have done? How would I have reacted with her gifts, her time, her abilities? I had to understand where she was coming from when I became an adult. As a child, it was different. So I had to look at it from an adult point of view. But yes, I did forgive both my parents before they passed away, and they stayed married.
Mm.
Wow.
You are a giant, Juanita. I'm just going to say that. You are a giant.
Yeah.
And well, I appreciate that. It took a toll. It was a long haul. And writing has helped. I think writing is really a great tool to use for healing, and I'm using it.
Yes, thank you for saying that. That's really what I hope everybody, take away from this event. Definitely for me, writing down my experiences in doctor's office has been healing, because everything's very just mechanical. You don't have that space to process your humanity the same way. Like everybody's poetry just stops and gives us a moment to be human in different spaces. Even Cynthia, I love your migration, the history of migration. I'm obsessed with migration stories. It's another project I'm working on under honoring elders, because I moved from the Bay Area to Little Rock, just slowing down and sitting in that story. And then Martin talking about, how we process Black Lives Matter. It's happening so fast. And so just everything to Misty, Deborah, Dr. Juanita, just awesome. No, I'm in the Bay Area now. Did I say Little Rock now? I'm always in a Little Rock state of mind. Crazy. So, yes. And I just want to encourage everybody to write after this. Hopefully you feel inspired to write about something that happened today. And I want to end on a happy note by sharing one more poem from Collective Madness. And I think that's important too. Like when we talk about writing and healing, sometimes we always focus on the pain. But we experience joy too. It is important to have, those celebratory poems as well. And so I'm going to end with Queen Mother. And some of my poems are persona poems. So that's not necessarily me, but just tapping into the joy of being a Black woman across histories. Queen Mother, you reading this, you love me because I am a survivor. I bleed, I sweat, I breathe the pride of Africa. I am God's love when my womb grows. My skin splits and a new birth happens. Babies cry like trumpets, light of the earth. My baby daddies are scattered in the eastern wind, chilled in the underworld of the west, and I stand from north to south, stepping in to raise kingdoms. My scars are a creation story. My tears compound dirt into diamonds. My heartbeat oxygenates the earth. My veins, rivers connecting the oceans. I breathe, you live. I breathe and you live. I breathe and you live until we die. You cannot live without me, your mother, your sister, your nurturer, your life giver. And without me, the whole earth is void.
Wow, thank you.
And that's from Collective Madness. Thank you for being here. And I'm just so excited. And I will send out the recording of this event to all of the participants. I'll upload it to YouTube so you guys share it and just continue. We'll continue to be in community. This won't be the last. We'll continue to be in community and conversation.
Great.
Thank you guys.
Great. Good night.
Hey.
Martin, Misty, Cynthia, Deborah. Hey,
Yes.
Andrea, good night, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good night, y'all. Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Welcome. Bye, everybody.